Hello and welcome to the Jesus Witch podcast. I'm your host, Lena Elsaya Lee, also known as Lena the Jesus Witch on TikTok and Instagram. The Jesus Witch podcast is a show dedicated to opening the conversation about including Jesus in witchery practices. The goal of this podcast is to not be evangelical. The goal is to spread the love, light, truth, acceptance, and oneness that is Jesus Christ himself. Here at the Jesus Witch podcast, we believe all people are loved by God and all people are loved by Jesus. We believe in community and the power of fellowship. We believe in giving whatever you reasonably can to help your neighbor who's in need. And above all, we believe in the power of creating a relationship with Jesus that is authentic and unique to you. Join me for new episodes of the Jesus Witch podcast every single Monday, and be sure to subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting app. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Jesus Witch podcast. I'm your host, Lena Elsaya Lee, also known as Lena the Jesus Witch on TikTok, Instagram, and on YouTube. This week on the podcast, we are going to be doing a tarot card episode and talking all about the Empress card and how it relates to the Bible, Christianity, Jesus, God, all of that good stuff. But before we jump into this episode, I have a few housekeeping things that I wanted to remind you of and different ways you could help support the Jesus Witch podcast. So firstly, the easiest and quickest way to support the Jesus Witch podcast is to subscribe to us on whatever podcasting platform you're currently listening to us and give us a rating of 5 stars because that helps get the word out about the show and gets it recommended to other people. You can also follow me, your host Lena, on all of my different socials. Like I said in the beginning, I have a TikTok, an Instagram, and a YouTube. You can find the links to them and all the different ways to help support the Jesus Witch podcast in the show notes page. The other ways you can help support the Jesus Witch podcast is through our Patreon, my Etsy shop, or even sending a donation directly to the show. On Patreon, you can get early and ad-free episodes of the Jesus Witch podcast, as well as transcribed or written out episodes of the podcast to make things a little bit easier to understand. I also have tiers on Patreon where I share my tarot spreads that I've written, as well as different Bible-based spells that I've written. Patreon supporters of the show also get an exclusive episode of the Jesus Witch podcast every single month where we talk about the different zodiac sign that's in the sky, and I love those episodes. We talk about different transits, how to work with the energy, a Bible-based spell you can cast using the energy of that sign, and it's so much fun. Then on my Etsy shop, I offer things such as Bible-based spell oils, Jesus and Christian Witch mystery boxes. I also offer various tarot readings on my Etsy shop, such as Talking to Jesus tarot readings or ones that connect with your inner child. And of course, I do birth chart readings because I love astrology. It's like my favorite thing in the entire world. And I love when people book birth chart readings with me. They almost always go over the allotted time because I love getting into astrology. I love talking about people's charts and I could do it for a really long time. So yeah, that's another thing that I do. I love them. I do them over Zoom and I write notes about your chart and then I send you the notes that I write about your chart and I give you tips on how to like work with each placement that you have because I really hate when people just talk at you and tell you, you have your moon in Taurus. This means that you are a stable person. No, girly, I got my moon in Taurus. I am not a stable person. How do I become a stable person like that? That's what we talk about. Other than that, I have a PayPal and a Cash App where you can send donations directly to the show through, and you can find all the links for all of these things in the show notes page. But now that I've done the housekeeping, let's talk about the Empress Tarot card. So the way that I like to break down these tarot card episodes, I have another one on the Fool, the Magician, and the High Priestess so far, and the Empress being the next card in the sequence of the Major Arcana is the next one that we are talking about. So the way that I like to break these down is I like to tell you a little description about all of the different Empress tarot cards that I have. I currently have 8 different decks in front of me. So we're going to talk about 8 different Empress cards. And the last one being the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot card of the Empress. And then after we talk about her, we are going to talk about how it relates to like Jesus witchery and like Christianity. I have a book. It's only available on Kindle unless like you want to spend $200 to get a hard copy of it, but I can only find it on Kindle. It was only like $5.99 when I bought it on Kindle, $2, something like that. It was like really cheap, and it's called Signs and Wonders Christian Tarot. I will leave the link to this particular book in the show notes page. I love using this book. It has helped me gain an understanding as to what the symbolism of each of the cards mean. I don't think it necessarily gives you an understanding of what the card means itself and how to practically apply it. At least as I continue to go through this book and I read more into it, I'm really like realizing that like I don't get a lot of practical application from this book, but I do get a lot of like symbolistic application, and that's just as important. But it's really good. It's a great book, and it's like only like $5 on Kindle, and like the Kindle app you can have on your phone, your tablet, your computer, like you could have it anywhere. So I really like it. So anyway, let's talk about the different Empress cards that I have, starting with the Empress from the Everyday Witch Tarot deck. The Everyday Witch Tarot deck is the tarot deck that I use when I do readings with Lilith. I feel like it gives a very powerful witchy message, and like it screams Lilith to me. There's a lot of black cats on it, a lot of like broomsticks. It's like super duper classic witchy, and I don't know, for me that just screams very Lilith. So that's why I use her for this deck. But they're Empress cards. So the Empress card in the Everyday Witch tarot deck depicts a blonde woman who is pregnant. She's holding her belly, which is how you know that she's pregnant. She's wearing a red and white dress. On the bottom of her white dress, like on the, like the skirt of it, there's these little like gold decals, like gold leaf decals, and she's wearing gold shoes as well. She has a white dog to her left side. I had to do like the L, the L's with my fingers to make sure that was the left. But she has a white doggy on her left side and then a black cat on her right. She's in a like meadow sort of thing. In the front, there are these like white daisy looking flowers, and then in the back, there are some sort of like pink type of flowers. She's in the middle of two different apple trees, and they just look like apple trees to me. So it kind of reminds me of like the tree of knowledge and good and wisdom from Genesis. I probably butchered the name of that right now, but it reminds me of that. The woman, the Empress, she also has a gold crown. She has gold earrings. She's wearing red lipstick, and she has a red staff, like wand type of thing that she's holding. The next Empress card that I have is from the Wandering Star Tarot deck. This is one of the decks that I like to use when doing like talking to Jesus readings or TikTok live readings. It's a deck that I use like if I want to do readings, but like sometimes like, the ADHD brain cells take over, so I might not exactly know the meaning of the card right away, and I need like a little bit of a trigger to get it in my brain. And I like this deck particularly for like neurodivergent tarot readers or people who may have like memory issues, or people like me who have ADHD and sometimes need to have a little bit of a focus memory jog kind of thing, because there are keywords that are around the card that that allude to what the card means, but you still need to have the knowledge of tarot in order to apply it. So with this card, with the Empress here, there is a woman who's wearing a yellow dress, and she has a gold staff in her hand. She has like a green neck piece on. It kind of looks like peacock feathers, which reminds me a lot of like the creative aspects of the Empress card, just like the other Empress from the Everyday Witch tarot deck. This Empress also has a gold crown. Next to her is one like green plant with like yellow buds and yellow flowers on it. There's like blue and white stripes all around her, like symbolizing light. Then there's like a halo effect around her head, and the halo has like blue and purple backgrounds to it. And like in color magic, blue and purple are very like royal and spiritually connected and wisdom colors. And we have a whole episode of the Jesus Witch podcast about color magic that you could listen to if you're interested in that as well. She has 5 different stars above her head, and then the keywords that are listed on this particular Empress card are luxury, beauty, harmony, abundance, grace, fertility, love, nature, beauty, and art. They listed beauty twice. I just noticed that for the first time ever now that I'm looking at it here. So you know what? You'll learn something new every day. And now a quick break from our show to talk about a few different ways you can help support the Jesus Witch podcast. One way you can help support the creation of the Jesus Witch podcast is by becoming a Patreon supporter of the show. Every supporter of the Jesus Witch podcast on Patreon gets access to our monthly community oracle card readings, as well as access to a secret Discord channel in the Jesus Witch Church. In that channel, you can leave any Jesus Witch questions or suggestions that you may have, and it's just a better place for us to connect as a Patreon community. We currently have 5 different Patreon tiers for you to choose from to help expand your knowledge on Jesus and Christian witchery. The first tier that we offer is the Mercury tier, and this provides written transcripts of each episode of the Jesus Witch podcast to make them more accessible and easier to take notes from. The next tier that we have is the Fool, and that provides early access to the Jesus Witch podcast as well as ad-free episodes. The following tier is the Magician tier, which helps to expand your Jesus Witch knowledge with tarot spreads to help you connect with the Abrahamic pantheon and monthly Bible-based spellbook pages. In the Hierophant tier, we go even further with Bible-based spell work. Each month, members of this tier get access to an additional Bible-based spellbook page. I also send you a mini spell kit every single month with the ingredients to cast your spell. With this tier, you also get access to a monthly spellcasting circle that happens over Zoom, where we cast the spell together, and it's a really fun time. Our final tier is the High Priestess tier. This tier gets everything from the previous tiers, as well as a one-on-one call with me over Zoom every single month to talk about your practice, where it's going, and what your goals are spiritually. Another way to help support the Jesus Witch podcast is by shopping at the Sun and Moon Jesus Witchery shop on Etsy. Over on my Etsy shop, I offer Talking to Jesus tarot readings, Christian witch mystery boxes, Bible-based spell oils, astrology readings, and so much more. You can also help support the creation of the Jesus Witch podcast by sending a donation directly to my PayPal or Cash App. You can find the links to both of those or any of the other ways to help support the Jesus Witch podcast in the show notes page. And a quick reminder, please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on whatever podcasting app you're currently listening to us on, and give us a rating of 5 stars because that helps to get the word out about the show. If you would like to connect with me further, be sure to join our free Discord group, the Jesus Witch Church, and give me a follow on TikTok and on Instagram at Lena the Jesus Witch. Now let's go back to our show. The next Empress card that I have is from the Kids Tarot deck. I have this deck for my kids, and I really like it because it takes some of the more scary cards, such as like Death and the Devil, and it changes the name of them, does not change the meaning of them. So when we do episodes about those specific cards, I'll still pull them out from this deck. But it just makes it more palatable and understandable for kids, while still leaving a lot of traditional imagery that makes you understand what the cards actually mean. And I'm trying to teach my kiddos tarot. My eldest is actually really talented at tarot. Like, he can look at a card from pretty much any deck and tell you exactly what it means. And I'm like, that's peculiar. That's interesting that you can do that. So I definitely got this tarot deck for him with the intentions of him pulling cards more independently so that he can like learn more about tarot himself and learn more about himself through tarot. So this Empress card here, we have the Empress. She is a woman who's sitting like crisscross applesauce on what it looks like to be like some sort of like yoga mat or like a lotus. She's wearing like a full covered outfit and is veiling like her hair, so she's like completely covered. But the only noticeable thing from her outfit is the Venus symbol on her necklace, which is like, depicting the divine feminine, is symbolizing that. Her outfit itself is like a peachy color, and it like ombres down into a darker pink, and the veil on her hair that she's wearing is a darker pink as well. She's surrounded by pomegranate plants, which if you read When God Had a Wife with us, or if you listened to the High Priestess episode of this podcast, you would know a little bit about the emphasis and the meaning of pomegranates for the divine feminine, and how that is a very Abrahamic symbolism for the divine feminine and for Asherah herself. Then behind her is some sort of lake, and then some hills with a bunch of trees on them, and there's clouds in the sky and stars surrounding her head. So the next Empress card that I have is from Trisha Newell's 1986 Mythic Tarot deck. This tarot deck is the only deck that I have that is not in print. It was actually passed down to me and my husband by my father-in-law. I found this deck while I was pregnant with Scott in my mother-in-law's basement. And yeah, it's something that my husband and I use in our practice together when we do like magic for our family. And all that good stuff. This is the only tarot deck that I don't show pictures of online. I have in the past before that became a set rule in my practice to only share like the energy and the image of these cards with my husband and I and our kids. But you can find pictures of them on the internet, and like I said, this one's not in print anymore. You can only get it on eBay, and it's kind of a rare deck, so it is a little bit more on the pricier end. I think the last time I saw like a new in box one, it was like $279. I don't necessarily think this deck is really worth that amount of money, like imagery wise, unless you work with the Greek deities, because it is a Greek pantheon deck. Like all of the imagery here is Greek deities. So I think if you're, if you're looking to invest in a vintage tarot deck and you work with Greek deities and you want this deck, like yeah, go for it. But otherwise, I don't think it's like that special of a deck. It's more sentimental to us for the reason that my father-in-law used it in his practice first. And now my husband and I are using it in our practice, and then we're gonna pass it down to our kids. So the Empress card in this particular deck depicts the Greek goddess Demeter, who is the goddess of like wheat and grain. And she's pregnant with, she's wearing this like really pretty, like if this was a real life dress, I would want it. It's a really pretty orange dress, and on the bottom half of it, it has all these like vines and flowers and all this beautiful like flower and springtime imagery on it. Since Demeter is the mother of Persephone, and Persephone is like the goddess of springtime in Greek mythology, I can only assume that Miss Demeter in this picture here is pregnant with Persephone, especially because there's a lot of springtime imagery on her head. I mean, on her dress. On her head, though, there is a crown, and it's not like a gold crown like the other two empresses. It is a crown that looks like a city. It's very interesting. I think that's a really cool way to like have a crown be there, like kind of like showing how creation is even like influential in our everyday life in our cities, like sort of thing, and like in basically in our everyday life, like what I said before. And then she's in a field of wheat. There's some like hibiscus flowers in the wheat. Then behind her, there's like hills and trees and a waterfall and a nice river, and it just depicts a beautiful like springtime looking harvesty crop area that is full of nature and very mother naturey and very very empressy. Like this for me is the quintessential act. The next card that we talk about is also the quintessential empress card, but like this is also the quintessential. Like these two, the one that is from the Lightseers deck that we're going to talk about now, and the one from the Mythic Tarot deck, these two are like my empress cards. Like when I think about the empress, this is what I think about. So the next Empress that we're going to talk about is the Lightseers Tarot Empress. And like I was saying before, this is like my quintessential Empress card. Like when I think about the Empress, I think of the one from the Mythic Tarot, and I think about the one from this particular deck. So this deck, this Empress, she is so unique. She is so beautiful. I love this. This card for me is worth getting this entire deck. Like just truly. Okay. So she has a gold background. There's like fiery orangey kind of color in the corner, but it's a gold background. And then there's the moon in another corner, and then there's a naked woman depicted on the card. Then she has brown hair, and in her hair there's some vines and leaves and kind of like twiggy looking things. She's like holding her head with her hands, and on her wrist there's like a bracelet that's made out of vines. On her shoulders there's like ocean coming out of it and fishes coming out of her shoulders. She looks like she's like literally creating ocean from her body. And then on her belly she has a pregnant belly, and she's pregnant with the world, with the earth. I love the way that this card is drawn, is depicted. It is so beautiful, and like the earth almost looks like the continents on the earth almost look like they're shaped as a fetus. I mean, like that's like not super clear, but for me that's kind of what it looks like. But it's really interesting. And then you can see like a light within the earth and like within the just the belly of her, and there's like all these little dots that are going around the empress and going around the moon and the earth, and these all like depict like how everything is all connected. It's so interesting. I absolutely love this card. The next Empress card we are going to talk about is the cutest Empress card that I have, and it comes from the Cat Tarot deck. I use the Cat Tarot deck to do inner child readings because it's so cute and I love it, and I like using it for inner child readings. For no other reason than it's cute and I love it. So the Empress on here is depicted by a gorgeous little kitty cat. She is white and she has brown markings on her. On her little head, she has a silver and bluish kind of crown with 3 stars at the top of it. At her feet, she has a gray rug and a little pillow with a paw print, Venus sign on it to depict the divine feminine. She has a red pillow bed that she's sitting on, and then there's a blue background behind her. It's a very simple card. The Cat Tarot deck is not an easy deck to read from. It is a deck that you need to know the meanings of the cards to read from. You also need to know Roman numerals to read this deck, because like sometimes you'll get like just Roman numerals and it's like really hard to count how many of like each thing is there. So there have been many a TikTok lives when I've been reading from the Cat Tarot deck and I'm like, guys, is this one here IV? Is that 4? Is that 5? Is that what number is that again? And like everybody has to like tell me what number it is so I can like do the proper reading, and it's just so funny. Normally I know the numbers of them. I realize how silly and goofy that makes me look. But you know what? Unless you've experienced it in a TikTok live, you don't know how fun and how magical it is. But anyway, that is what the Cat Tarot Empress looks like. I love doing inner child readings with this freaking deck. I love this deck. It's so cute. And my kitty cat is watching me record this episode and looking at me like I'm a crazy person, because to him, I'm just laughing at myself. But that's really no different than if I'm not recording a podcast anyway, so. The next Empress card that I want to talk about is the one from the Ethereal Tarot deck. This is the tarot deck that I use to work with Loki and Venus. When I started working with Venus, and like I have this whole story more like eloquently laid out in the Jesus Witch podcast episode titled Working with Other Deities. At least I think that's what it's titled, something like that. Any hoozles, I work with using this deck for both Venus and Loki, because when I had invited Venus into my practice, I wasn't like using tarot a lot with Loki, and I didn't really feel like investing money into buying another tarot deck. I have so many tarot decks. Like, I think 8, right? That's how many I said I have in front of me. 8. I think that's enough for one disorganized witch, and I thought that getting another tarot deck would be kind of like bad for my practice. It's just bad for me as a person kind of thing. So I said to Loki, hey, can I use this tarot deck for Venus as well as you? And he's like, yeah, sure, I wouldn't mind sharing this with a pretty lady. And if that's like not the most fucking Loki thing you've ever heard, I really like this deck for Venus. I got it for Loki just because like I really wanted this particular tarot deck, and when I was looking for one for Loki, I was in a metaphysical shop in Mystic, Connecticut, and I was like, Loki, like, I know this deck isn't necessarily your vibe, but it's really cool. I really want it. And he's like, yo, I'm fucking chaos. Like, just get whatever you want for me, because I'm chaos anyway. It doesn't matter what kind of deck. There's not gonna be like a chaos tarot deck. I'm like, okay, cool. So I got that for him, but honestly, looks wise, aesthetic wise, I think it fits Venus a lot more because it is just so gorgeous. It's so pretty. It is this like gold foil on each of the cards that makes each card like pop really nicely. This is another deck that I would say is not particularly good for beginners. Like, this is one you really need to know the meaning of the tarot deck in order to get the full picture in your own personal readings. But it is a really gorgeous one, and if like you're just a tarot collector and like want to have a really pretty deck, or if you're somebody who's more well versed in cards and you're looking for a prettier deck to have, I highly recommend this one. So the Empress on here, she is just this beautiful woman sitting in a blue like robe looking thing, and then like she has like a black shirt on that has a flower on it, and it almost looks like there's like rib decaling or detailing on her shirt, followed by like the Venus sign on her chest. Then she's, instead of holding like some sort of wand in her left hand, she's holding a flower, and she has a flower crown that is topped by 7 stars. Yeah, 7 stars. In the top 2 corners of this card, there are like little, they look like gold pomegranate buds in the top, and then she's like has this halo around her, and at her feet towards her like bottom, there's a vine with a bunch of different like flowers on it, like this green vine with purple flowers, and it's really pretty. And that's what she looks like. She's really pretty. I love this deck so much. It's so gorgeous, and like the gold foil on it really makes this deck like just absolutely pop, especially for somebody working with Venus or like another like really pretty deity. So the final Empress card that we're going to talk about is the star of our show, and the Empress card that the Signs and Wonders Christian Tarot book writes about, which is the Rider-Waite-Smith Empress card. So they have a very good description of this particular card in the book, and I'm going to read that to you in a moment. But like from what I'm seeing, just like right out in front, it is a yellow background card with a woman sitting on a throne. Her throne is made out of a red chair and like a red pillow. They're two different shades of red, and she's wearing some sort of white gown that has like, they look like pomegranates on them that also like look like the Venus symbol as well. They seem like to have some sort of like dual imagery there. There's trees behind her, a river and a waterfall behind her. You have the wheat in front of her, like that the one that's in the Mythic Tarot deck, the one that depicts Demeter. There's a lot of wheat and harvest imagery in this particular Empress card. The Empress is holding in her left hand again one of the, wait a minute, like would that be her right hand? Like the way that I'm looking at it, it's like on the left side, but I guess that would be her right hand if you're, I don't know. Anyway, on the left side of the card, she's holding a staff, a golden staff, and then on the floor there's a heart shaped thing, maybe like a pillow. It kind of looks like those like on the Ouija boards, those little the thing that pushes the Ouija board around to get the letters. It kind of looks like that, but it has a Venus symbol on that. And then the Empress herself has a crown, a golden crown with 12 stars, and then she's wearing a pearled necklace. Okay, so from the book Signs and Wonders Christian Tarot, this is the description of the Empress card. On this card, we see an eternally young woman holding in her right hand. Ooh, that answered my question. Oh my god. So in her right hand, she's holding an orb, which represents the sun, with a crown of 12 stars, which represents the zodiac. And she's dressed in a gown covered in pomegranates, which represents the divine feminine. She reclines on a pillow, behind which there's this red scroll of some form. We see a heart-shaped shield with a symbol on it, which I said before is the Venus symbol. Behind her, there are many trees and a river of water flowing down the mountains. At its core, the Empress is meant to be a physical representation of the divine feminine and Mother Nature itself. So, some practical information about the Empress card that I probably should have put at the beginning of this episode. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit rusty. This is only the second episode that I'm recording for season 6, so I need to get a minute to get back in the flow of things. But anyway, a couple of like vital information pieces about the Empress card. Firstly, it's ruled by the element Earth and the planet Venus, so that is why there's a lot of Venus imagery, a lot of like the glyph for Venus on it, and a lot of divine feminine symbolism on each of the Empress cards. In the major arcana, each of the cards are represented by either a planet or a zodiac sign, so this is the one that is represented by the planet Venus. At its most basic meanings, the Empress means when it's upright, femininity, beauty, nature, nurturing, abundance, which you can tell by the imagery that is depicted on each of the Empress cards. You see a lot of divine feminine characteristics. You see a lot of pregnancy imagery, which is creation. A lot of people think like, oh, if I have a dream that I'm pregnant, does that mean I'm pregnant? No, it means that you're about to create something important, or you're doing like a big life shift, or you're birthing something new like in your life. I get pregnancy dreams all the time. Right before I started the Jesus Witch podcast, I was getting pregnancy dreams all the time. I was literally pulling tarot cards that were telling me I was pregnant. I was going on TikTok every day and like seeing like, if you're seeing this, you're pregnant right now. And it was like to the point where I like genuinely thought I was like pregnant. It was fucking terrifying. I want a third baby, but not now. Like I want, firstly I want to make sure that they could be an Aquarius. But second of all, like I still need a little bit of time to recover from Scott. You know what I'm saying? Like for my second baby. But anyway, I was getting all this like pregnancy like symbolism near me, and it wasn't because I was pregnant. I was pulling the Empress all the time, but it wasn't because I was pregnant. It was because I was creating something new, and I was doing something different, and I was doing something that was going to bring my family, abundance. It was bringing, creativity. It was nurturing other people, because like this is not something that I'm saying to toot my own horn or to sound egotistical, but a lot of people have told me that this podcast helps heal their religious trauma, and that's like a thing. That's a nurturing thing that I'm doing. I'm nurturing others in a way that creates a safe space so that they can explore what happened to them religiously in the past and what they would like to believe in the future, sort of thing. So yeah, like that's like a more practical application of the Empress. In the reversed position, at a really basic tone, the Empress usually means that there's some sort of creative block or you're unhealthily depending on other people. However, another big theme of the Empress card is Mother Nature and connecting to it. I've said this before in episodes that we've talked about the divine feminine, and in like Bible verses that talk about the divine feminine, you can really see her in nature. When we talk about her in Proverbs, she says how she was hovering over the water, how she was the spirit hovering over the water as, God created the earth, as the mountains were formed, and how she was there for that. She put her own little mark on those specific things, and that's why, it's Mother Earth, Mother Nature. Have you ever heard Daddy Earth, Daddy Nature? No. It's Mother Nature, and there's a reason for that. And I don't mean to be too binary with my language here, but if we're talking in this like very simple, like black and white dualistic aspect that, ideas such as the Empress card were created under, it is a very, divine feminine, leaning into that like mothering aspect kind of card. And like, this is just a quick tangent. I promise I'll make it under a minute. But anybody of any gender can be nurturing. Anybody of any gender can like feel the divine feminine, can get close to her, can be reached out to by her. You could be the most masculine man in the entire world, but the deity that reaches out to you be Venus or Lilith. Like, it doesn't have to be, such a strict binary with, deities and like what people are trying to tap into using them. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're here to express different themes and not necessarily like, the things that we've created here on Earth kind of thing. But anyway, tangent aside, that is what the Empress card means at like a surface level. So what Signs and Wonders says about the Empress being related or adjacent to Mother Nature is Mother Nature, vast and incredible, lies on a pillow, a pregnancy pillow. On the card, Mother Nature is eternally pregnant and continually giving birth. And though we often care not to think about it, Mother Nature is also continually dying. So for me, this makes me think about the cycle of creation and creativity in general, right? So you come up with an idea, you execute the idea, you make it happen, you see the fulfillment of this idea, and then you go and do another idea. That's what, like, as a creator, that's what I have to do, right? So I find a TikTok that I want to make. I make said TikTok, I post it to the world, I let people see it, and then I go do the cycle again and again and again. Same with the podcast episodes, same with tarot readings, whatever it is, as a creative, as like somebody who is, living a more, not typical life, right? Like a not like a 9 to 5 kind of life sort of thing. It's constantly a cycle of creativity, and it's very much like stepping into that Empress energy as much as possible. Another note that the book makes about the Empress card that I wanted to highlight, and I feel like it kind of links back to the last quote that I read, even if though it's like several pages after that. It says, but one of the essential factors of this card is creativity. Placed inside each human is the capacity to be a co creator with God. As above, so below. All the attributes within God are within us. It could not be otherwise. Since we are a part of God, everything in God must also be reflected inside of us in one way or another. Therefore, God's intelligence, God's power, and creativity resides in each of us in a small degree. So obviously this makes me think of the whole creation story back in Genesis, where God says, like, let us create human beings in our image, and then he created them in their image, sort of thing. And firstly, I like that verse a lot because it's a lot of pronouns that make you assume that there's more than one God, that there's more than one like heavenly host doing this creation. So it makes room for, the divine masculine and the divine feminine. So like God and Asherah within the Abrahamic religions. But I also like this verse because it's like unrefutable evidence that we are created in God's image. If God is a creator, if God is an imaginative and a nurturing and a parent like figure, then we also have that inside of ourselves. We can be nurturing, we can be parental figures, even if you've had a crappy upbringing yourself, or it's hard for you to do that. Like it's inside of you, sort of thing. And I really like that information, and I really like how this card kind of reflects that, how we are created in God's image, how what we are and who we are is not mistakes, and everybody is individual and everybody's different for a reason. We're all not meant to look the same, and we're all not meant to be the same and have the same personalities and the same interests and the same wants and desires, and that's for a reason, because God is way too expansive to only have one path. And the fact that we all reflect that is really interesting and really beautiful if you think about it. So I really like that the Empress reminds me of that particular aspect of God. So another thing that Signs and Wonders says about the Empress card and like the way that she looks in regards to the Venus shield that's on the floor on her feet. The Empress is internal love. Love is a term that many of us know, but few of us are able to define. The best definition I can give is to state that love is an experienced union. Whether we're talking about loving to eat a potato chip or loving our children or loving God, while we may have three very different domains for that love, they are all shared in a communal based upon union or oneness. Religion means to union. The world itself means to bind together again. We have lost harmony, we have lost oneness, and we must rediscover it. That is the true meaning of religion, and that's the truest message of the Bible. Then the book goes on to say, and this like reflects the whole message of unity. It says, God and nature are one. There is harmony. There is union. Jesus talked about streams of living water, that water to become animated with the power and presence of God, that water to flow through us, to resurrect us, and to reattune us, our spirit, with nature and with God. I love this quote so much. And I think that this is honestly my favorite quote out of everything that I've read to you from this particular book today, because it really depicts on how, like, the Empress is the idea of reconnecting yourself with nature, reclaiming that relationship with God and becoming one with God's creation. It also says in the book somewhere, like, that it's one thing to worship the creator, and it's one thing to worship creation, right? But it's another thing to be participant in both. So like what that means to you, I don't know. For some people I feel like that might be gardening, for other people that might be hiking. For me in particular, that means like going outside and dancing during the full moon and like being a part of that energy, or like walking around barefoot and feeling that energy, like really experiencing nature and creation in a way that I can tangibly be like, I am part of this. Whatever created this earth, whatever created this plane that we are on, also created me. And that's a really powerful thing to think. I really like this quote, and I think that this is my personal favorite quote about the Empress, because no matter if you're looking at it from like a religious standpoint or like a scientific one, it rings true. The same reaction that like started the Big Bang, that triggered like evolution, that triggered XYZ, was the same reaction that created us, right? And same thing with creationism. The same God that created the earth, that created Adam and Eve, that created all of the plants and all of the, animals and all that good stuff, created you and me. And I think that's just like really beautiful, and also makes you see how small our world is and how like similar each belief system, even if it's like a scientific belief system, could be. So the final two quotes that I want to read for you about the Empress card that come from the Signs and Wonders Christian Tarot book are cards that have to do a little bit more with the practical application of the card. So the first one is, she is creativity, she is subconscious, she is wisdom, and above all, she is love. She reminds us when we are in harmony with her, regardless of what happens to our bodies, we ultimately can never be hurt. I think that that's a really cute little quote, and it's something that I personally, as somebody who has a lot of chronic pain, I resonate a lot with that. It reminds me of 2 Corinthians 12, where Paul is talking about how when he's weak, he's strong because he has a thorn in his side. And it kind of reminds you that no matter what role you're playing in creation during your lifetime, it's an important role and you're expanding consciousness and you're learning a lot from it. So I like that quote for that reason. And then I was kind of touching on this one before, but it says, worship the creator, not the creation, but proper adoration and appreciation for the creation can be a direct pathway to the creator. So it's another practical thing of saying, like, get in touch with creation and find that, like, Empress in your own everyday outside world. So that is our discussion on the Empress Tarot card. I hope that it helped you understand the card itself a little bit better and like some of the symbolism and imagery that's on the card. I really like doing these tarot episodes, and I know that I haven't done one in a long time because they just are a lot of work, to be honest. It's a lot of research to do. It's, pulling out every single tarot deck that I have and pulling out the card and finding it. It's also making a graphic for my Patreon supporters, because I like to make a little graphic to go adjacent to these episodes so that you could print out and put in your own grimoire or your own like tarot book to help you learn more about like Christian tarot. If you enjoyed this episode of the Jesus Witch podcast, don't forget to subscribe to us on whatever podcasting platform you're currently listening to us on and give this show a rating of 5 stars to help get the word out. If you would like to support the Jesus Witch podcast, you can find links to several different ways to do that in the show notes page. In the show notes page, you could also find the links to all of my social media, my Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and the link to the Jesus Witch Church, which is my free Discord group where we create community surrounding Jesus witchery, spirituality, all the different things. We have like chats for like everything. So just like come join us there. We'll talk, we'll connect. It's a super fun place to be. So now it's time for my personal favorite part of the Jesus Witch podcast, our verse of the day. So today's verse of the day is the verse that is actually associated with the Empress card, and I probably should have put this in the beginning of the episode, but I'm going to put it at the end. So all your real ones, the ones who listen to this point, you are the ones getting the verse that's associated with the Empress card. I don't know what that was. Anyway, so the verse associated with the Empress card is Genesis 1:1, which simply says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." And the reason that this is associated with the Empress card, according to Signs and Wonders, the Christian Tarot book, is because it's the basic and the beginning creation verse. It is the first one where we see the Empress's energy in the Bible, and it's like the first verse ever. So, like, really cool. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to this week's podcast episode. I'm so excited that season 6 is being recorded. Yay, season 6. Yeah. Bye. Thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next week. If all goes well, we'll be talking about witchin' as a spoony witch. If I'm reading my calendar correctly, which I might not be because there's a lot of things on there. Because there's a lot of content. Okay, anyway, I'm gonna go now. Peace out, Girl Scouts. Bye!